Well, President Biden seems to have an image problem. He has a substance problem, too, by the way. And he's puzzled about his dismal approval ratings, rattled that they are lower than that of his predecessor, Donald Trump. But the New York Post has this advice for him. The U.S. loves a winner, not a whiner, Joe Biden. This comes after reports the president is frustrated with his staff, fearing that their cleanup campaign makes him look weak. And just yesterday, they walked back his comments again, this time on handguns.
A 9mm bullet blows the lung out of the body. So the idea of these high-caliber weapons is there's simply no rational basis for it in terms of about self-protection.
He supports a ban on sale of assault weapons and high-capacity magazines and expanded background checks to keep guns out of the dangerous hands. He does not support a ban on the sale of all handguns.
So that was the walk back. But the president's team did not help with what some are calling his biggest messaging mess-up. That was on inflation, the #1 issue to voters. In fact, they doubled down on his take that it was just temporary.
Some folks have raised worries that this could be a sign of persistent inflation. But that's not our view.
Over time, as the economy is turning back on, we'd see some of these transitory effects. That's what's been predicted.
I'm not saying that this is a one-month phenomenon, but I think over the medium term, we'll see inflation decline back toward normal levels.
These one-time increases in prices are likely to have only transitory effects on inflation.
Economists call all these things transitory effects.
Transitory taking on a whole different meaning as we enter a summer full of inflation. It wasn't too long ago, by the way, that President Biden told us this about his poll numbers. Watch.
It's going to be up and down. That's why I don't look at the polls. Not a joke.
Not a joke, Emily. Serious. He doesn't look at the polls, except, well, wait, NBC, they have something else to assert. They say this. A particular sore spot is his slumping poll numbers. He's mystified that his approval rating has dropped to a level approaching that of his predecessor, Donald Trump. Quote, he's now lower than Trump, and he's really twisted about it, another person close to the White House said. It also says, Emily, that he gets weekly polling updates. So the guy doesn't look at his poll numbers, not a joke, but he does get weekly updates.
I mean, that's another example, Kaylee, why he's frustrated perhaps over these poll numbers. He's mystified over them. But what about the American people? They're frustrated. They're mystified that prices keep increasing, that the value of the dollar keeps plummeting, that the leader of the free world and our commander-in-chief refuses to see the writing on the wall, which is that these poll numbers reflect the absolute lack of support we have for him because of his dearth of leadership. The fact that he's confused by or frustrated by this lack of support, to me, is the insult to injury on top of Americans who are wondering why their dollars are not stretching as far as they used to, who are wondering why they can't afford to drive as far as they used to have to for empty shelves looking for baby formula. The problems that Americans are facing are real, and they impact us every day, especially those vulnerable communities and the hardworking average Americans that this president purports to support. And the fact that he brings it back to himself, that he has consternation over the media messaging playing cleanup every day, or the apologist media and his team playing cleanup, I have zero tolerance and zero patience for. My priority is with the American people, and we need more from him.
Yeah, there's also likely zero patience for this when former Press Secretary Jen Psaki, here's what she told us on baby formula before she exited the administration.
President Biden has directed the administration to work urgently to ensure that infant formula is safe and available for families across the country. This is work that's been underway for months.
So working on it for months, Carly. Flashback, here's NBC yet again. Biden is annoyed that he wasn't alerted sooner about the baby formula shortage and that he got his first briefing, listen to this, first briefing in the past month, even though the crisis had long been in the making. So which is it? Have they been working on it for months, or did the president just get his first briefing?
Yeah, it's pretty clear that on the baby formula shortage, the president only recently got his first briefing on it. That was a major communications issue. That was the main fault of the FDA and the Biden administration, just for not being on top of that one. But I did think that the NBC News reporting on the president being frustrated with his staff or constantly correcting him was fascinating. And then what happens? The president's staff issues a correction to the report about the president being frustrated with the corrections, because a White House spokesperson told Fox News that it's not true. That's not how the president feels. And all of the corrections that they have issued are first approved by the president, when we know that when he was in Poland and he said that Putin should no longer remain in power, reporters got a correction on that about 2 minutes later. So humanly impossible for the president to have approved that one. And really quickly, when it comes to the low poll numbers, I think one of the biggest problems with this administration is that it just feels like they are on a different page than many Americans. During a time of high inflation, high gas prices, we learned that one of the next major announcements that the president could make would be canceling $10,000 worth of student loan debt, which is just something that could increase inflation and anger a lot of Americans who have already paid off their student loans or didn't go to college because they couldn't afford them.
Hey, Carly, you raise a good point. The Poland cleanup, came within minutes. Not enough time to get an okay by the president, one would think. He was barely off the stage. My thing is, sure, if the president makes a mistake, what you do is you go to your boss and you say, let's talk through this. How do we fix this? You don't just go and clean up his messes without presidential buy-in, because then you yourself are kind of acting as the president. Raymond, there's this, though. NBC covering for Biden. Here they go. Any assessment of Biden's performance needs to take into account the epic challenges he faced from the start. They came in with the most daunting set of challenges, arguably since FDR, only to then be hit by a perfect storm of crises, from Ukraine to inflation to the supply chain to baby formula, said Chris Whipple. He's an author of a book about chiefs of staff. He goes on to say, what's next? Locusts. Biden wonders the same thing. I fail to remember this kind of reporting for President Trump when he dealt with, I don't know, once-in-a-generation pandemic.
Yeah, well, it does feel biblical. I'll give them that. But the question is, what is the source of this? 80s reboots are all the rage right now. This feels like Nightmare on Pennsylvania Avenue, where a president wakes up and realizes he's not in control of his body, his voice, or his administration, apparently. But look, this has been going on a long time, Kayleigh. The fact is, Donald Trump, the man you worked for, he would never have tolerated people speaking for him, putting blue dots at locations where he was to stand and stay during press events. But this was an administration that began, and a political bargain that was crafted at the beginning as a sober, constrained candidate. He was confined to his basement. He read the teleprompter, and Anita Dunn and the folks who shaped this administration thought that would be sufficient. Well, now you see a free-roaming Biden is a dangerous thing, because he says things that are not just cute or gaffes. They are national security crises, and the staff has to clean them up. But that tension between the man suddenly aware that he's been programmed for years and the reality is causing this explosion in the media, and it's ugly to watch and sad for the Americans who have to suffer through it.
Well, reality is important. Jillian, yesterday,
Yes.
President Biden out with an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal, and some of the things he said in the op-ed caught my attention. He did level with the American people about the challenge of inflation, but the first third of the op-ed painted a very different picture than how Americans feel. We have a scroll, we'll put it up, about the job market being the strongest since World War II. Many other things about small business applications being up, U.S. economy being in a better position than almost any country, maybe faster growth than China, manufacturing jobs growing, the list goes on. I don't know that that's how the American people feel right now.
Quick side note, Kayleigh, that book you mentioned by Chris Whipple called The Gatekeepers, fabulous book. I highly recommend it to anyone who cares about presidential history. It was a great inside look into previous administrations. I think you might like it in particular, being a former press secretary.
Would love to check that out.
Yeah, it's a great book, and I don't know Chris Whipple. This is not a plug. I just happened to have read the book a couple years ago. To a point Carly made a moment ago about some magical thinking here, I think there's going to be a reckoning for the communications team at the White House. I think they have committed multiple fouls over the last year and a half, and I don't think they have been held to account for it. They just announced a couple days ago they're going to do this June pivot to the economy. They've not wanted to focus on the economy publicly for a while now, understandably, but they say it's time to tell the American people that despite what they believe, the economy is strong and they have a handle on inflation. And this underscores the very crux of the problem with the communications team, which is they believe they can convince the American people that their lived experience isn't real. They truly believe that they can tell people, despite the fact they're paying more at the pump, at the grocery store, for shipping, online shopping across the board, everything is fine and the economy is good. That's a strategy that doesn't work. You can have the cleverest, craftiest messaging that anyone has ever come up with before, but you can't convince people that their reality isn't true. It's going to fail every single time.
Yeah, wise advice. Talking points do not change personal reality. That is absolutely the case.